there. For those who don't know me, my name is Brian Edelman, and those who do know me, you've probably seen this video coming for a little while now. Series of Unfortunate Events has always been a big interest of mine, and I've always enjoyed the books, the movie, and the TV show, and I've always wanted to do one big comprehensive review of all of those things together. Well, as it turns out, that's a whole lot of work and time that I do not have to dedicate to that. But then I thought to myself, I don't need to dedicate all that time to cross-reference all of these different series. I need to make a series of Unfortunate Events video reviews. So the way these videos are going to go is I'm going to make one video about the books, one video about the movie, and then another one about the TV show. Now, where are we going to start with that? I'm glad you asked. I could think of no better place to start than with the movie. Before we get into all of that, and I make no apologies for taking the time to do this, this channel is microscopic. So every single view, every single like, especially every subscription that happens is like a huge celebration to me. Thank you so much. It really does mean the world to me. So, thank you. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. Hey, but put on the brakes here. Let me explain something. The way that I review media properties that are based off of books is I try to, as much as I can, take them on their own merits. Now, I have been known to be theatrically inclined.
Theatrically, a word that here means reads books, I guess.
In the past, I totally understand that a movie can't and honestly shouldn't attempt to just remake the book. It's got to stand on its own. So while I will be drawing some comparisons maybe to the books and things that they've changed or added, the bulk of my criticism here, I really want to emphasize, is about the movie. So that's what we're here to discuss. Okay. Don't need that. Side note, first of all, I didn't know that I owned this DVD. Second of all, what was going on here? They gotta pop open these DVDs like a briefcase? Okay, listen, Blockbuster Video. No one has ever had trouble with DVD cases not sticking together. It's actually a phenomenal design. Have some damn confidence in yourself. Should I put that in the background? Whoa, cinema. So let me tell you a quick story from my childhood. So when this movie was first coming into theaters, I remember it being a big deal at school, people going to go see it. And one of my friends went to go see this movie. He started watching it, and it starts following this happy little elf. And it's done in claymation. By the way, it's gorgeous. It is such a cool way to open the movie with this like very happy elf claymation music video. And then suddenly, it goes dark. And then Jude Law's voice comes on as Lemony Snicket, and he says, "If you want to watch the story about a happy little elf, there's room in theater number 2, or whatever it is that he says. And so my friend was already like, okay, this is kind of scary. And then he goes on to explain what the movie is going to be about house fires and grammar or something like that. But then he also says, carnivorous leeches. And my friend said, nope, I don't want any part of that, and peaced out of the theater. And from that moment on, this movie became not just a movie in my mind, but maybe the most horrifying media property ever. If it could scare my friend so bad within the first couple minutes that they ran out of the theater, I was too scared to touch it. Genuinely, I didn't watch this or read any of these books until high school. I rented it, I think, from Blockbuster. I watched it, and I loved it. The fact that they could make that kind of movie for kids, I just thought was super cool. To put in context, through my entire childhood, I was scared of any sort of like children's horror thing, such as Coraline, Nightmare Before Christmas, Series of Unfortunate Events. And so in high school, I finally got up the courage to engage with these things, and it was not as scary as I expected it. But I did think it was endlessly cool. So what's the basic plot? So you've got these three kids, the Baudelaires, Klaus, Sunny, and Violet, and their family dies in a horrible house fire right at the beginning of the book. Now, their family was very rich, and Violet, the eldest girl, is set to inherit that fortune when she turns, I think it's 16, something like that. And so they need to be put in the care of one of their closest living relatives, which they took to mean the relative that lives closest to them, which in this case is an evil and scary man named Count Olaf, who wants nothing more than to get the Baudelaire fortune for himself. So, without getting too much into the weeds, things don't go well for him, and he gets more and more evil and continues to pursue them as they go from new guardian to new guardian to new guardian, all while being chased by Count Olaf, who wants to steal their fortune from them. Okay, so let's talk about the movie itself. I know what you're thinking. Finally. Okay, starting off. Jude Law as Lemony Snicket. While I do think that Jude Law does have, it's just such a milky, delicious, tasty voice, I don't think he really pulls off this Lemony Snicket character. Let me put it this way. Jude Law's Lemony Snicket does not seem terribly interested in saving the Baudelaires or doesn't seem to have any connection to them at all. When I see a character who is this narrator character, I always want to know, why are they the narrator, right? And at the beginning of the movie, he says that it is his duty to have to write down all these terrible things that happen to the Baudelaire orphans. And he never explains why. He just says that it's his duty. Okay, but here's what I will say as a positive for it. In comedy, at least, there's this principle of the straight man and the funny guy, right? You got the straight man, who is basically the audience surrogate, who just says things flat and doesn't seem like there's anything weird going on at all. And then there's the funny guy, who waves his whistle and dances around whatever, and says that the straight man is the ridiculous one. And to have the Baudelaires and Jude Law's character, neither of them playing it for laughs, both of them playing it straight, and then the rest of the world be this crazy psychotic thing, actually does add a really nice rhythm to the movie, where we connect and we want the Baudelaires to survive. We want them to make it, and the world is getting crazier as it goes on. So it really nails having those kind of conflicting ideas. It does a really nice job of marrying those two. Even in that introduction, right? You got the silly, crazy, happy elf, and then the reality of the darkness. It's cool. Now, Violet, which is played by Emily Browning, by the way, I think that her portrayal of Violet is the hard carry for the Baudelaire orphans. Sunny is played by literally two babies, because I guess they grow very quickly at that age. And then Klaus, weirdly, seems kind of hostile in this movie. Because he's very bookish and he's always saying, I read that you could do this. I could read that you did that. I would think for the orphans to be working together really well and for us to understand that they love and work together so well, we need Violet to always be calling on his knowledge and for him to happily give it, rather than him just saying, what this means. And she's like, yeah, that's great. Appreciate you.
𝒆𝒏𝒂𝒕𝒆. That's Italian for very few ingredients,
That's great. Sunny?
Come on. We need to see as an audience that the Baudelaires are working together all the time, that they are always on the same page. Because if they're not on the same page, then there should be plot points about, pinning them against each other. But there's not. It really reads to me like Klaus is kind of like a know-it-all, and Violet cannot stand him. I do think that Emily Browning's performance of Violet is super strong. It's probably, I said I wasn't going to compare it to the books, but it really is a character come to life. Maybe she was feuding with Liam Aiken, who played Klaus, her brother. But whatever was going on there, it was not a fun family dynamic. If you're going to watch this movie, I do have to warn you, there's a couple jump scares in there. One, Meryl Streep, and two, Jennifer Coolidge. Meryl Streep kind of makes sense. Occasionally she'll do one of these, kids movies, and especially if it's something connected to books, it's something that's known, it kind of makes sense that she'd be in there. It still surprised me. But then what I did not see coming is that Jennifer Coolidge doesn't just play one of the lead characters, she plays one of Olaf's acting troupe. And I didn't even know she was in there until she spoke at the end of the movie, and she starts talking in her Jennifer Coolidge-like way. And I was like, what the hell? As much as this movie is about the Baudelaires and about all of the different guardians that they have over the course of it, the one that we really need to talk about is, of course, Jim Carrey as Olaf. Jim Carrey's got to be a tough man to put in your movie, because if you put him in your movie, you're going to sell a lot of tickets, but it's going to become a Jim Carrey movie. Sometimes his unhinged way of being only helps the movie, and sometimes it hurts. Sometimes you get something like The Mask, which would not have even made it past the editing room floor if you didn't have Jim Carrey. And then you get something like The Cable Guy, which just feels like a waste of time, but it's kind of funny to watch Jim Carrey run around. Well, I am delighted to say that Jim Carrey is perfect for this role of Olaf. Not just because he can play a fun, evil character that you root against, but also because he is so good at impressions and changing his demeanor. I swear, if I was in the Baudelaire's position and I saw him when he arrives dressed as Stefano, the way that he changes his voice and the prosthetics that they put on him, I would not have recognized him for sure. Which is very funny to watch a talented actor play someone who's supposed to be a very untalented actor. It's very funny to me. But he is just terrific through the entire thing. Honestly, the Baudelaires are getting in the way of Count Olaf's screen time. So, yes, there is a Jim Carrey problem. Casting him can be a detriment to your film. In this case, he's the glue holding this entire thing together. Aesthetically, the movie is awesome. I did not think it would hold up aesthetically. Some of the visuals when they try to CG in Olaf's house, it looks kind of bad and cheap. But just the little details of the world, I think, really just make it feel so imposing and dark, but also so light. I mean, a perfect example of this is when they are going up the road to Aunt Josephine's house. Aunt Josephine is one of their guardians. The place that they're going to is supposed to be off the beaten path, and it's supposed to be a place you're not allowed to go. So you'd think a no trespassing sign would be an easy thing to show. Yes, but instead they show a sign that says, "Does anyone know you're going this way?" Which is so funny and grim. It's just, the whole world marries those two ideas together incredibly well. Also, for costumes, everyone is just covered in belts. There's more belts in this than Kingdom Hearts 2, which is saying something. It's weird and it's gothic and strange, but it just works. In this crazy world that they invented, these costumes are perfect. Really, the biggest roadblock that this entire movie hinges on, and seems to be kind of the difference between people that really like it and people that don't, is the plot. Like I said, the basic story of a series of unfortunate events follows them going from guardian to guardian to guardian. So here's where the movie ran into an issue. They kind of had a couple different options here. One, they could adapt just the first book and hope that they get funding to make 12 more movies. Unlikely. The other option here is pretty obvious. Try to put all 13 books into one movie. Also seems pretty unlikely. You could do a movie where you skipped around from book to book to book and just kind of beeline the finish line, but kind of run into two problems there. One, people are going to be mad that you skipped over their favorite book or part of the series. And two, if you do want to make a sequel, you got nowhere to go. So they went the route of let's adapt the first 3 books and leave it at that, which seems okay. Except they also tried to bake in some of the plot points later on. The movie follows the events of the first book pretty well, except early on in the movie, they find out that Olaf... Well, folks, you will not be seeing this setup in the next part of this video series. Anyway, so they were trying to adapt book 1, and then they added in a plot point where early on, the kids are taken away from Count Olaf, and they go immediately to their new guardian. The events of that one pretty much follow the events of the books, at least skipping to the main chunk, right? Like you kind of get the beginning of the book and the end of the book and shove them together and just cut out the middle bit. It kind of works. And then they move to the 3rd book, which is where we get to the Meryl Streep guardian. And that one, again, same sort of thing. They just took the beginning and the end of the book, shoved it together. Again, it kind of works. And then, after they got to the end of this book, they went back to the first book. Which is weird, except the events don't play out the same way. Spoilers for the movie here, and kind of spoilers for the first book as well. In the book, Olaf realizes, oh wait, I can get my hands on this fortune only if I'm actually married in, and because I'm the guardian of these kids, I can marry Violet so that I receive her fortune. And so he hosts a wedding ceremony that he brings in a real judge that thinks that it's just a play. But then they figure out right before the wedding that in order for them to be legally married, she needed to have signed the certificate with her own hand. And she's not left-handed, but she signs it with her left hand. Haha, very tricky. I also don't think that's how that works, but it doesn't matter. So in this version, we actually see her take the pen, move it to her left hand, and then Olaf stops her and says, "Your right hand, please." As if to wink and a nod to the audience saying, well, that might have worked, but it just didn't for some reason in this reality. Again, movies should not try to just make the books into a visual. So it's not a bad idea to change the ending, but it just seemed weird to me that you would take the time to do the first, second, and third book and then go back and do the first one, but not actually follow through with that. Maybe that's just me, but the way that the movie plays out, it feels more like a road trip rather than a saga. And again, that's fine. Movies do not have to be like their books. Because in the books, you can take the time to really let them settle into each of their locations. If you're going to try to adapt all 3 of these, you really just, we're here at Olaf's house for a day, and then we move to Uncle Monty's house for a day, and then we move to Aunt Josephine's house for like a day. And then they bring you back to the first one, which just seemed weird. Because the movie kind of ends in a conclusive way, but also unconclusive. Spoiler alert, their family is part of a secret organization, but we don't learn any of the details about that secret organization in this movie at all. We just see that they get a spyglass, but the police capture Olaf, and they play their hand here and lay down the most iconic line from the series, where it talks about what may have seemed like a series of unfortunate events may have been a blessing in disguise or something like that. They use that in this movie as if to say there will be no more. And Olaf is captured at the end of this movie, and he's said to have to endure all of the terrible things that he put the Baudelaires through. And then there's a little side note where they mention, by the way, the parents are part of a secret organization, and maybe someday you'll learn about those. And also, Olaf escapes. So we could keep going. So it's just weird, right? Because you already played your finale hand of we're probably not going to make another one. But if we wanted to, we have a way to do it. It really reads as not confident in what you're doing. Do they want to make a sequel? Maybe not. But I guess they just want to leave the door open for it. It's really disappointing. It makes it feel very unsatisfying. You know, people are calling for a sequel to it, not because, oh, this is the best version of Series of Unfortunate Events, but because they left the door open. Olaf has escaped. There's a secret organization we don't know anything about. So why even put those details in there? And then I have a couple other just little nitpicks here. These don't matter in the scheme of things. It doesn't really make the movie better or worse. It's just weird things I noticed. One, why add this weird cop character? He has like 3 lines. You don't need him, right? Mr. Poe is the guardian for the children. He's showing up at all these places. We don't need a weird cop character to also make jokes. You know, it's funnier, actually, if Mr. Poe is their only person that can help these kids and he's just not listening to them. That's funnier. I'm sorry. And then my other nitpick, it's a small thing, but it seems so weird to me. The end of the movie, we get away from Olaf's clutches, and we have that scene where they're in the car, and Mr. Poe says, I think we can make one more stop before we, move on, or whatever he says. It's that classic, like, oh, where are we going? He takes them to their burnt down house. I'm sorry. Thanks, Mr. Poe, for bringing me back to the place where my parents died like a week ago. Like, is Mr. Poe torturing the kids? Does he want them to be like, hey, I know things are looking up, but remember when your parents died? That's like the end of the movie, too. Don't tell me that Mr. Poe knew that there would be a letter for them from their parents with the secret spyglass and stuff so they could ride off into the sunset. No. That was unopened mail that had arrived there while they were in there. So don't tell me that he knew that these things were going to happen. He's just an ass. One other thing I would hate myself for not bringing up. Phenomenal credit sequence. Which it seems crazy to compliment a movie's credit sequence. I don't know if I've ever done that before in my entire life. But it was like formative for me in high school. It got me really interested in like shadow puppets and stuff like that, because we get to see these like silhouetted puppets that they do have details on them, but they're done like you would do shadow puppets. It's gorgeous. I'll put some sort of visual for it, I'm sure. It's beautiful. It's a perfect somber sort of helpless feeling to the end of the movie. Last thing I want to say about it, this franchise needs a Muppet adaptation. I know. Every single movie would be better with a Muppet adaptation. But this in particular, right? You've got the Baudelaires, who should just be normal kids, and then everyone else should be a Muppet, right? You could have Muppet... Oh, maybe actually you have Olaf not be a Muppet, but he's disguising himself as a Muppet in the different environments that he's in, because everyone else in the franchise is a Muppet. Oh my gosh. Wow, what a great idea. Henson Studios, give me a call. I got you. Really, the biggest problem that this movie has is that it lacks commitment to what it wants to be. Does it want to be the beginning of something big, or does it want to be just a small adaptation of a couple things? And that's it. Now, to set expectations, next video for this series won't be coming out for a long time. Ambitiously, I'd like to do one every month, but let's be honest here. I've got to watch an entire TV show and read through 13 books. And it is a mini series technically, and they are children's books. But come on, I got a life, I thought since I'm not starting with the books anyway, which is a psychotic choice. I might as well jump to the TV series, and then we'll finish strong with the books and really go through all that. That video is going to be like 10 hours long. So anyway, like I said at the beginning, Every single view, comment, and especially subscription really means the world to me. But my content here is free and it's for you. If you enjoy it, please drop me a like, drop me a subscription. I'd really appreciate it. But regardless, I will see you in the next one. Oh, jeez. That's a bad idea. Oh, almost put a hole through the wall. Sheesh.